For months, Red Bull have been surrounded by uncertainty heading into the biggest regulation reset in modern Formula One history, a brand new power unit built with Ford. The departure of Adrian Newey, senior leadership figures walking away, and a grid full of rivals convinced that 2026 would finally be the moment Red Bull fall back to the pack. But now the narrative is changing, and fast. Inside the paddock, Red Bull's internal tone has shifted from damage limitation to cautious confidence. Journalists are hearing different whispers, engineers are speaking differently. And most importantly of all, Max Verstappen no longer sounds like a driver preparing an exit strategy. If you want to understand why this matters, why it could reshape the entire 2026 title fight, and why this video might completely change how you see Red Bull's future, make sure you're subscribed right now. The 2026 Formula One season is not just another regulation change for Red Bull Racing. It is a defining moment that will determine whether this team remains a powerhouse or begins a slow decline. For the first time since their arrival in Formula One back in 2005, Red Bull are entering a new technical era without Adrian Newey. For nearly 2 decades, Newey's vision shaped every championship-winning concept, every aerodynamic breakthrough, and every dominant car philosophy the team produced. His absence alone would be enough to raise serious concerns. But the changes do not stop there. Over the past 18 months, Red Bull have lost an extraordinary amount of senior leadership. Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, Jonathan Wheatley, and Rob Marshall. Figures who defined Red Bull's culture, decision-making, and race day execution have all moved on. To many inside the paddock, this looked like a slow dismantling of the structure that made Red Bull so formidable. When you combine that with a brand new power unit built in partnership with Ford, the early outlook for 26 appeared bleak. 12 months ago, even internal conversations suggested Red Bull could be in serious trouble. Some believed their power unit might start the season near the back of the grid, but according to respected F1 journalist John Noble, something significant has changed since then. Red Bull's internal messaging has shifted. The tone is no longer fearful. It is cautiously optimistic. While Mercedes are still widely expected to lead the field under the new regulations, Red Bull no longer see themselves as outsiders. There is now genuine belief that they will be competitive and possibly far closer to the front than anyone anticipated. That shift in confidence matters because the 2026 power unit rules are among the most complex Formula One has ever introduced. Performance will no longer be defined by raw engine power alone. Battery efficiency, energy harvesting, deployment strategies, fuel chemistry, and compression ratios will all play crucial roles. One manufacturer may have a superior battery but a weaker internal combustion engine. Another may excel in fuel efficiency but struggle with electrical deployment. In such a finely balanced formula, even 1 or 2 tenths of a second per lap could decide championships. Ferrari, despite their reputation, are believed to be facing internal challenges with their new engine concept. Honda have growing concerns over battery performance, which offers unexpected reassurance for Red Bull after ending their partnership with the Japanese manufacturer. Audi, meanwhile, have deliberately played down expectations, hinting that their focus may be more long-term than immediate success. Against this backdrop, Red Bull's recruitment strategy begins to make sense. Over the last few years, they have aggressively signed engineers from both Honda and Mercedes to build their powertrains division in Milton Keynes. What has truly surprised observers inside the paddock is not just the improvement in Red Bull's confidence, but how quietly it has happened. There has been no public bravado, no bold predictions, and no attempts to control expectations through the media. Instead, the optimism appears to be rooted in data, simulations, and internal benchmarks that suggest the team's new power unit is progressing more smoothly than feared. Engineers reportedly believe their early integration work between chassis and power unit is already ahead of where some rivals were at a comparable stage. That kind of structural progress, especially under such complex regulations, can be far more valuable than outright performance numbers this far from the grid. It also explains why Red Bull's leadership has adopted a measured tone. They know that overconfidence would invite scrutiny, but quiet belief allows them to focus on execution rather than noise. Equally important is how Red Bull have approached their partnership with Ford. While Ford's branding presence is highly visible, their real contribution lies in advanced manufacturing processes, electrical systems expertise, and long-term development infrastructure. Sources suggest this has allowed Red Bull powertrains to close gaps in areas such as durability testing and software integration, which are critical under the new hybrid rules. The result is a program that feels less experimental and more industrialized than many expected at this stage. That perception alone changes how rivals assess Red Bull's threat level, because it signals not just potential speed, but reliability and scalability over an entire season. Finally, there is the psychological element that cannot be ignored. Red Bull have thrived historically when positioned as challengers rather than favorites. The current narrative places Mercedes at the front and casts uncertainty over everyone else, which suits Red Bull perfectly. This blending of engineering philosophies could prove decisive. There are even strong rumors that Red Bull and Mercedes may have independently discovered the same loophole within the 2026 engine regulations, specifically involving compression ratios. If that is true, it would offer a small but critical advantage. And in an era where margins are expected to be incredibly tight, small advantages can define the entire pecking order. On the sporting side, Max Verstappen enters 2026 in unfamiliar territory. For the first time since 2021, he will not carry the number 1 on his car. Despite a remarkable comeback during the second half of 2025, he lost the championship to Lando Norris by just 2 points. Internally, Red Bull know that defeat was not Verstappen's fault. It was the car's lack of competitiveness before the summer break that cost them the title. Despite the disappointment, Verstappen chose to stay. Throughout 2025, he was heavily linked with Mercedes and Aston Martin, and those rumors have not disappeared. If Red Bull are not competitive in 26, those conversations will return quickly. But former world champion Damon Hill believes Verstappen's behavior late last season tells a deeper story. Hill argues that if Red Bull were truly lost heading into the new regulations, Verstappen would already be voicing frustration and applying pressure. Instead, he finished the season praising the team, lifting morale and speaking with pride about their fight back. That does not sound like a driver preparing an exit. It sounds like someone who believes in what is coming. Red Bull may have lost famous names, but the organization itself has not collapsed. They fought until the final races of 2025, under enormous pressure, and that competitive DNA remains. With Gianpiero Lambiase staying as Verstappen's race engineer and a positive working relationship forming with new team principal Laurent Mekies, stability exists where it matters most.
Previously set at 18-1, the maximum compression ratio was reduced to 16-1 for 2026. The goal of this change was to encourage closer competition among manufacturers, as lower compression slightly reduces engine power. One point under discussion relates to the effect of thermal expansion on engine components. The regulations specify that compression ratios are measured at ambient temperature when the engine is not running. However, engine components expand naturally when operating at high temperatures. This means that an engine measured at 16-1 when cold may perform at a slightly higher effective compression ratio when hot. Simulations suggest that the difference between 16-1 and 18-1 compression could provide around 10 kilowatts of extra power, or approximately 13 horsepower, potentially impacting lap times by 3 to 4 tenths of a second.